Hi, welcome back. In this session, we are going to develop a Mule REST service to delete a record from database table. We will read URI params over the request. Then based on URI params, we will delete records from database table. And the URL is going to look like this, that is delete employee. Then we'll be sending employee ID, employee name. And HTTP method is going to be delete, and the service should respond back in the header as 200 OK, and in the body it should respond back status 200 message success. As part of this session, we are going to develop a stored procedure to delete a record from database table. So we will call that stored procedure by passing these two parameters so that the record will be deleted. Let's understand how we can call stored procedures from Mule database connector. Let's go for implementation. Right click on source main Mule, create a new flow as delete employee, click on finish. Let's drag and drop listener from HTTP module, and I am going to use same HTTP listener configuration, and the URL is going to look like is delete-employee. So here let me update first in request. So this is the request we are going to make, and let me copy the same, go to studio and put here, and which is of a delete based HTTP method. Let's put delete here. Let's save, and now let's have a start log to say that the flow has started. Let's take it as start log delete employee flow started. Let's save it. Now let's introduce database stored procedure call. But do we have a stored procedure in database to call from here? No. Now let's go to SQL developer, and I have a table called EMP with records EMP ID, EMP name, EMP status. Now I want to develop a stored procedure to delete a record from this table based on the input. So how we can write a stored procedure? Let's go to Chrome, search for an example as delete employee stored procedure sample, and we can go to this Java 2s link, and here we have a sample procedure to delete the record. Let's copy this procedure and go to SQL developer. Let's put here. So let's remove these 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, and now I wanted to make this procedure name as delete underscore EMP, and I wanted to send two parameters. The two parameters are ID, it would be a number type, and name, it would be a varchar type. And now delete from EMP table where my column name is EMP underscore ID. So let me keep it as EMP underscore ID equal to this ID, whatever the value I am getting, I inject here. Then and EMP underscore name equal to whatever the value I am getting here, I inject this value here, so that it will delete the record, and whatever the name we have here, that should be ended here. Let's execute this stored proc. The stored proc has compiled. Now let's click on commit. So I am going to call this stored proc. So let me copy the stored proc name and go to database connector. Let's choose the same configuration we created in previous sessions, and to call a stored proc, the syntax is we should write this in open brace close brace, remember it. Then we should write call procedure name, then open closed brackets. In this we need to pass the parameters. What it was expecting? It was expecting emp id comma emp name. Let's save. We need to pass these two parameters as URI parameters. So as we know, the URI parameters don't contain keys. It's not a key value pair, it's just a value. Then how we can read these fields? We discussed in previous session that we need to keep the corresponding placeholders at subpath slash, so employee ID, so that the employee emp ID, the 100 will be injected into this. Next, employee name. So now have two URI params that I am injecting here. I need to map those to these named parameters. So under input parameters, click on fx, provide open brace close brace, then for emp id, let's put here, let's map the attributes dot URI params dot employee ID, the placeholder we created, and for emp name attributes dot URI params dot employee name. Let's save it. And also we see here in out parameters, output parameters or in out parameters, the procedure how it is taking input parameter, it will also give us output parameters. Either both in out parameters we can configure here, or we can configure input parameters here. In similar way we configure output parameters here. The output parameters will be outcome of this database call. So let's save it, and we are done with stored proc call. The syntax is open braces close braces, in middle call procedure name, and we need to pass the parameters values which it was expecting. So here let me put it as call delete employee stored procedure. Now let me have the transform message to set the expected response, and the expected response is what? It is status as 200, message as success. So let me rename it to set response, and it should be responding as JSON. Then here status should be 200 and message should be success. Let's save it, and let's have a end log to print the flow has successfully completed. Let's put it as end log and save message as completed delete employee flow. Let's save it and deploy the debug the application. The application has deployed. Now let's go to Postman and make the request. Anyway, before making the request, we are sending 101 employee ID and employee name as John. Let's go to database and have a look what are all the data available in the database. We have two records. One is 101 John and one is 102 Mark. Now let's see whether this record will be deleted when we call the stored proc. Click on send. Request came. Now we can see the attributes that came over the request as URI parameters as two parameters. Those are employee ID, employee name. Click on next, 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 next. We can see the response has 200 success. Let's go to database and select it again. Now we see the John record as deleted. So this way we call stored procedures using database connector in Mule. That's all about this session. See you in next session. Thank you. Happy learning.